Takamura vs Toji, the ghost of the JAA versus the Invisible Man. Both fighters are kind of like the boogeymen of their verse, so today let's take a quick look at who wins in a fight. To begin, I'm going to take a look at Takamura's scaling beginning with his AP. Takamura is the strongest character in Sakamoto Days, and he currently holds the most destructive feat, being that he cut a part of Tokyo Tower. This is calced to be anywhere from large building to potentially city block level in power. Moreover, no character in the verse is ever able to withstand a slash from Takamura without taking significant damage. Even top tiers like Nagumo, Gaku, and Sakamoto, who even had a bulletproof apron on, were not able to tank Takamura's slashes, instead all incurring significant damage. Also, it's stated in the fanbook that Takamura's stats are straight up infinite, meaning that they have no limits and cannot be measured numerically. Obviously, Takamura is not teleporting around with boundless speed and straight up deleting things from existence, so it's more likely that if the fanbook is to be believed, Takamura simply scales to the power of his opponents. And what I mean by that is that Takamura will always adapt to be a level above his opponents, always allowing him to be the strongest in the verse, while still allowing for a level of error that accounts for the few instances in which he takes damage. Speed-wise, if you take the idea that Takamura's stats are limitless, then Takamura should theoretically have boundless speed if the situation calls for it. More realistically though, and more in line with the series, we can do some scaling based off the other high tiers of the verse to create a lowball estimate for Takamura. Fat Sakamoto, with no training or help from Granny Mia, blocked a bullet with a fork, which is a Mach 18 feat. This Sakamoto is stated to be 30% of his prime self, meaning a hypothetical prime Sakamoto should be around Mach 60. This is likely consistent as a non-turbocharged Mafuyu during the JCC exams was able to straight up cut bullets mid-air, which is calced to be just under Mach 2. Mafuyu is so much weaker than the higher tiers of the verse that I think it would make sense for the speed of the series to be able to enter the double-digit Machs. The contentious part comes from when you compare Takamura to Prime Sakamoto. Sakamoto has a statement that says that Takamura is way stronger compared to him when he was in the order. You can take this to mean that Takamura has gotten stronger since Sakamoto's time in the order, or that Takamura is just stronger than when Sakamoto was in the order, meaning he's stronger than Prime Sakamoto. No matter which way you take it though, I think it's fair to say that Takamura should be reaching that Mach 60 range given the power that he's already demonstrated and the statements from the fanbook. Durability wise, we see that Takamura is one shot by Takazuki and damaged by a Gaku using a broken part of Takamura's own sword. Before these two instances, we actually don't know if Takamura's ever gotten injured. There was an old man in the hospital after the JAA invasion arc, and I know some people think that he's actually Takamura, but I'm not too sure. If we take the old guide to be Takamura, then we know he was damaged by a building level explosion, albeit by an unknown amount. If we don't, then we don't really have much for durability scaling other than the fact that he can't withstand his own attack. Again, it's possible that Takazuki actually also scales based off the threat of the opponent, meaning the attack that killed Takamura was specifically made to be stronger than Takamura, but we have no confirmation of this. I think the best we can say for now is that Takamura is building level as a baseline, with the possibility of scaling up depending on how you interpret certain events and whether or not you take the fanbook seriously. In terms of intelligence, Takamura is not particularly impressive. He definitely has a pretty solid battle IQ, as shown when he does things like reattach his own arm and sharpen his sword with bullets, but that's really about it. Takamura, while not always senile, definitely fights more on instinct than with a strategy, and a majority of his showings just involve him massively overwhelming his opponents with raw speed and power, rather than using a comprehensive strategy to win. Hacks-wise, Takamura has two things. For one, his cuts are so clean that he, along with the people he attacks, are able to reattach their limbs with ease. His other hack is his super sensitivity to bloodlust, which supplements his really bad eyesight. It can sometimes be abused and used against him, but Takamura could also just lock in and not be senile, so I'm counting it mostly as a benefit for him. With Takamura scaled, let's take a look at Toji. Toji's AP should scale anywhere from city block to large town level. Jogo's maximum meteor is calced to be around large town level, and 15 Finger Sukuna admits that he would have taken damage from it. A fully awakened Maki who is equal to Toji later goes on to scrap with and land blows on 15 Finger Meguna, and while Meguna isn't taking massive amounts of damage, Sukuna never states the severity of the damage that he would have taken from Jogo, so we can leave large town level as a high ball for Toji. On the lower end, we have Toji at city block level, again based off Meguna. Meguna's punch that launches Yuji through buildings is calced to be city block level, and Maki's relativity to Meguna implies that Toji would be at that level too, so he should be city block level at the low end. Speed is always a tough one for JJK, but I'll do my best to scale it. If you want to take Gege's statement of Naoya just barely exceeding Mach 3 as literal and in line for the series, then Toji should be vaguely above Mach 3, since fully awakened Maki had no trouble dodging Naoya's attacks. However, if you want to be a little more generous for the verse, there are a few options. First is Hakari's lightning dodging feat, which would put Toji around Mach 2600 to maybe Mach 4700. Also, I am not counting light speed JJK. The other option would be to take a look at Sukuna blitzing Piercing Blood, which is anywhere from Mach 23 to Mach 55. Toji doesn't necessarily have any direct scaling to this version of Sukuna since the one Maki fights is quite a bit weaker, but we can leave it as an in-between calc since it's either Mach 3 Toji or Mach 2000 Toji without it. Toji's durability is the same story as his AP. Maki directly tanks a punch from the same Meguna that was shown to have city block level AP, so Toji's durability is at least city block level. Maki took next to no damage from this hit, so it's definitely possible and very likely that Toji scales up from this, reaching the realms of large town level based off Jogo's maximum meteor. Outside of that, the attacks that later go on to damage Maki and Toji don't really have consistent calcs, so city block to large town level is our best option. Intelligence is actually something Toji is particularly known for. He had a counter for every aspect of the Limitless that he knew about, he was smart enough to plan around Gojo's presence when trying to kill Riko, and he's generally shown a really high level of Jujutsu knowledge. Moreover, in terms of actual combat tactics, he was able to trick Gojo into thinking he was going after Riko after releasing the fly heads, and he was even able to immediately come up with a counter to Gojo's red after seeing it for the first time. This is to say that Toji is a really intelligent fighter and that, despite his high level of strength compared to everyone else, he still prefers to play it cautiously and plan around his opponents to make his job as quick and as easy as possible. In terms of hacks, Toji also has quite a few. Toji has a solid level of precog through his heightened senses, giving him the ability to feel minute movements in the air to predict where his opponents will be. Additionally, he can track people through scent, double jump off the air, and heal himself at a superhuman rate. Lastly, he has his inventory curse granting him with a plethora of weapons, including the durability bypassing Soul Splitter, the infinite chain of 1,000 miles, and Playful Cloud to hit really hard. He also has other weapons, but they will more than likely be useless in this battle. With both fighters having been scaled, let's take a look at how they do in the fight. In terms of AP and durability, I think it's clear that Toji takes this more than not. A low ball estimate for both fighters leaves Takamura at large building level, while Toji is significantly higher at city block level. Takamura reaches city block level on a high ball of him cutting Tokyo Tower, while Toji enters large town level. But this is without the fanbook, which I will address now. Basically, if you think Takamura has infinite or limitless stats, he wins. A Takamura that has no limit to his stats, meaning he can progressively get stronger, faster, and more skilled depending on the power of his opponents, would obviously beat Toji. But while Takamura has been shown to pretty much never get overwhelmed no matter the odds, I think it's kind of insane to argue that Takamura's stats can't be measured numerically, so we're going to proceed with the assumption that Takamura doesn't have infinite stats. Speed-wise, Takamura likely takes this. Toji is probably not a lightning timer, at least not in combat speed. You could make the argument that Hakari has lightning timer reaction speeds, but I find that a little tough to do. Urame was visibly surprised and almost overwhelmed by Shibuya Choso's piercing blood, and Hakari literally says that Urame was a tough opponent. If Hakari was truly a lightning timer, I don't think he would have had nearly as much trouble fighting Urame, so I'm going to say that Toji is also not a lightning timer. This leaves Toji at either just above Mach 3 or somewhere around Mach 23/55. Regardless of which one you choose, it's clear that Takamura is just a bit faster than Toji all the time. Intelligence-wise, I also believe Toji is the smarter fighter. Takamura is great at doing things on the fly, but he largely operates off instinct, while Toji actually employs strategies into his fighting style. Takamura's instinctual fighting style works great when he massively outstats everyone he fights, But against Toji, Takamura's fighting style is going to encounter a lot more resistance. And it's not like this is Toji's first time fighting an opponent that relies on overwhelming force. He's done that with Gojo, so I see him having little trouble planning around Takamura. And in terms of hacks, Toji also takes this. His precog will definitely help offset the speed difference, his soul splitter will probably just instantly break Takamura's sword, and if he feels the need to, he can even try longer range attacks. Ironically, Takamura's cuts being so clean might even mean that Toji's body has an easier time healing itself, since his cells would still be alive, so he might even be able to replicate Takamura's arm reattachment feat. So ultimately, I'm giving the win to Toji more times than not. If we take low balls of both characters, Takamura's sword might actually just break upon contact with Toji, and while Takamura's low ball speed is still massively faster than Toji's, the precog, intelligence, and variety of tools at Toji's disposal would help offset that. Takamura is getting one shot by Toji regardless of whether or not he uses the soul splitter, it's just a matter of when Toji lands his attack. Takamura's highballed AP would be able to harm Toji, but again, Toji heals and might even heal faster from Takamura's attacks, so I see Toji's superior AP, hacks, and intelligence giving him the win.